Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on loose parts in action. This talk is going to last for about 30 minutes, and at the end, we're going to have time for us to discuss. So without, just because it's late at night, I'd like to just jump straight into it. And if you're watching this later, I hope you feel free to send me any questions that you have so we can follow up with this. Because this is something really worth listening to. Loose parts in play, loose parts in action. Let's share my screen. You can see my slides.
Okay.
No. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear. No. Why? I don't. Okay. Okay. Just I don't know what's happening, but I can't hear you at all. Let me. Can you hear me? Can you hear? I can't hear you. Oh my gosh. It was so nice before.
Can you hear me now?
Yes! I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now can you hear me? This is so frustrating. How's that?
Really good.
Can you hear me?
Great. Yes.
No echo?
No, not anymore.
Okay, here we go.
Ufa.
Let's try again. Okay, so back to it. Loose parts in action. What are loose parts? This definition is one that I love. It's so simple and it says everything. Loose parts are open-ended materials that can be used and manipulated in many ways. That's it. There's no greater mystery. It's just anything, any kind of materials that can be put together, taken apart, used in just one material, lots of different types of materials. You've probably got loose parts happening in your classrooms anyway. Blocks can be considered loose parts. The term loose parts was actually coined by an architect from Britain. His name's Simon Nicholson. And it was way back in 1971 that he wrote an article. I love the title of this article. It's How Not to Cheat Children, the Theory of Loose Parts. And he described loose parts in this way: open-ended materials that can be used and manipulated in any way. Now, there have been a lot of other more complicated definitions, some of which I think are worth sharing. So the Oxfordshire Play Association refers to loose parts as, listen to this, alluring, beautiful found objects and materials that children can move, manipulate, control, and change while they play. Isn't that lovely? We can also define loose parts as objects that children can combine, redesign, sort, put together, take apart. And here's the important part. Here is the very, very important part. I hope you're listening. They can do all of this with these materials without any specific instructions or interference from an adult. This means that the ways children use these materials, are only limited by their imaginations. And I love that. There is definitely space for this kind of material and this kind of play in my classroom. Now, we can summarize the most important characteristics of loose parts in the following way. On this slide is a nice little summary. I'll let you have a read of that slide. So they don't come with instructions. So it's materials that can be played with in a free, self-directed way. You can see why I'm into these, right? With me and my free play. They don't come with, they can be one type of material, or you can combine lots of different materials. There's no right or wrong way to play with them. That also means that because there's no right or wrong, it means children of every level of development, linguistic, physical, everything, can play with these successfully. And they're open-ended enough to be used for multiple purposes. Now, Busy teachers will really appreciate this characteristic because you can have one set of materials that you can use across the curriculum, one set of materials that you prepare and you have on hand and you can use in many different lessons. And who doesn't love a time saver? Am I right? So
Yes.
loose parts. Here are some other materials that are not loose parts. And I like to add this because I think some people get a little bit confused, and this really illustrates why. Don't get me wrong. I love these materials. I love them. Who doesn't like a doctor's kit in their drama corner? You know what I mean? Like puzzles, cars. These are wonderful, wonderful materials. But can you work out what it is about these materials that make them not loose parts? You're probably thinking what I'm thinking. These are all store-bought toys that have a pre-designed purpose. That banana is a banana. You look at it and it has already had an assigned purpose to it. It is a banana. A toy car is a toy car. Children will look at it. They'll know you drive the car. So these kinds of materials don't require any kind of stretch of the imagination to think of a purpose for them. Contrast that with a stone, for example. Now, a stone can become anything that a child can imagine. And we've all seen kids doing this with sticks and stones in the playground. We've all done this ourselves, you know. You pick up a stone and it becomes a phone, or you drive a stone around, or you fly it through an air and it's suddenly a dragon. These kinds of materials don't have a pre-designed purpose, and therefore we can consider them to be awesome loose parts materials. Here's another reason why I love loose parts materials, because, and I want to see hands up from teachers who have spent their own money on materials. Has anyone here reached into their pocket and paid for materials for their lessons? Sol, I know you have. What about you, Bruna? Ever paid for any materials?
Always.
In your classroom? Yeah, right. We all have. And that's another reason why I love loose parts. We all have this limited budget to spend on materials. So the materials that we're using, really, we need to be making choices that are going to, first of all, maximize a child's development, but also can be found, collected for free. I mean, loose parts. Solution for everything. Here are some ideas of what you can start collecting to build up a wonderful stock of loose parts that can provide hours and hours and hours of developmentally rich play. Check out this list. We've got bottle tops, and that could be the plastic ones or the metal ones, seeds, dried leaves, ribbons, toilet rules, no, eh? Toilet rolls.
Rolls.
Buttons, boxes, toothpicks, sticks, all of these things here. These are all things that you can get for free. And they are, well, not all of them are things that you can get for free, but most of them you can get for free. And the ones that you can't get for free, you can get parents to send in. You can collect. You can often find places, like I lived next to a costurera, like a place that sewed clothes and did ajustes and all of that kind of stuff. And I just went in there and said, listen, if you have any scrap fabric left over, could you collect it for me and let me use it? It was like perfect. You can always find, also the bar across the road from the house I used to live in, they used to collect the bottle tops for me. It was wonderful. So this is a good list to use as your starter kit. So why do we use loose parts? I'm going to give you 5 reasons now that we use loose parts. The first one, and I think it's probably one of the most important ones in terms of the kind of skills we would like to develop within our children, is creativity. If you read the research on creativity in early childhood, you will find that most researchers agree that creativity is something that can be encouraged or stifled by the school system. So we can either help creativity or we can do terrible damage to children's creativity. Creativity and divergent thinking are also something that are highly valued in today's world, and creativity in childhood leads to innovation in adulthood. So as educators, I really believe that we have the responsibility to ensure that we're providing an environment that stimulates a child's creativity. And play is a fundamental aspect of this. Think of the example I gave earlier with the multiple ways that a child might play with a stone. Now, loose parts is exactly the type of activity that encourages a child's imagination, creativity, and innovation. If that's not enough, we can also say that loose parts develop critical thinking and problem solving. And let me show you what I mean by that. Like, loose parts often encourage children to ask this question. I love this. What if?
What if?
What if? What if I pile up all of these blocks? What if I turn this into a flower? What if I take this apart? What if I fill this up? What if I mix these together? What if? What if? This kind of inquiry leads to investigations, testing hypotheses, analyzing results. They help our students become critical thinkers and problem solvers. And again, these are skills that you need to survive in the job market in the future. Loose parts is also developmentally inclusive. Like I mentioned before, no right or wrong answers. That means that everyone can play successfully with loose parts. And I'm talking about children of all ages, all abilities, and all proficiency levels. Loose parts are also cross-curricular. So you'll find that you can use loose parts to introduce science concepts, math concepts, all kinds of different cross-curricular subjects can be explored through loose parts. And of course, and this is the most important one for us as language teachers, loose parts promotes language development. And I'd like to give you some practical ideas now so I can really illustrate to you how this looks in practice, how we can use loose parts in our English classroom to work on language. And I want to do this with 5 different activities, real activities that I have tried and tested. Okay, the first one I've called sensory colors. Now, guys, I do have a handout. Ladies, I do have a handout for this as well with the activities on it. So if you're taking notes, great, but don't worry too much if you haven't been able to write down everything, because I do have a handout with all of the instructions for these games. So sensory colors is a game that I call, or an activity with loose parts that involves those wonderful gel balls. Have you seen them from the florist? Yeah. They start off as these tiny little balls that you put in water and they soak, and these balls like rehydrate and you have gel balls. Well, you can get these online from Mercado Livre, but you can also buy them in florists. These are great sensory materials for touching, stirring. Honestly, adults and children alike, give them a bowl of these gel balls and they can't resist putting their hands in, stirring them, pouring them. And what I do with them is I get them to sort the colored gel balls into different cups or different containers. So I'll have a big mix of lots of different colors, and then we practice the vocabulary for colors by sorting and counting them in English. And the sensory aspect, the sensory nature of this game or this activity is just so much more memorable than using flashcards. And what we want is for language learning to be memorable. So this is a great way to do it, loose parts. A collage face. This is a really simple way of teaching and practicing parts of the face and emotions. I have had these lovely discs. They were actually used for clay and Play-Doh. They're sort of round chipboard, very cheap discs, but you can use placemats, you can use anything. But the idea is you can use a plate, a disposable plate. So you have this sort of round shape which represents the face, and then you just provide them with a selection of different materials. If you're following me on Instagram, you've seen this activity on Instagram. And then let children use a variety of materials to make faces and help them work out how we move or how we position eyebrows to be angry or surprised, or lots of different ways that you can work with this activity. What I've noticed is if you have already been doing facial features, parts of the face and body, emotions in your unit. As soon as you put this round disc out and the loose parts, it happens naturally. They naturally start getting these materials together and putting together faces. So it can be used as a free play activity, or what I like to call an invitation to play. The next one are styrofoam balls and toothpicks. We use these to make 3D shapes. This is a great activity for cognitive development, problem solving, and it can be very easily tied into any kind of unit on shapes, or I've also used it to work on houses. When we've done a unit that included as well this story of the 3 little pigs, I've given them materials like this, like make styrofoam balls and toothpicks, Play-Doh and craft sticks, as well as little wooden blocks. And I've gotten them to construct houses. And then I've come along playing the role of the big bad wolf and tried to knock over these houses. And every time I was successful, they would be challenged to have to try again, but make it stronger. So it's through this process of experimenting, trying it out, failing and trying it again, that it becomes this really wonderful challenge for them that they get right into. The next activity is called It's Not a Stick. It's Not a Stick is the activity we've talked about in our last session, also known as It's Not a Box, but it's not always easy to have loads of boxes in your classroom. So sometimes having a stick can be just as useful, but easier. It could be, it's not a stick, it's not a pencil, it's not anything you have on hand, but you know this game. This game can be used. I mean, a stick is not a loose part in itself per se, but you can do this activity where they turn this stick into lots of different things, and then you can give them materials to actually work on their sticks, and they can do all different kinds of things. They can paint their stick, they can wrap ribbon around their stick, they can do lots of different lovely things to these sticks to create some kind of new purpose for the stick. The last one, my favorite pizza, you can actually see in the photograph in my slide. This was actually a loose parts activity that emerged very organically, and it ended up being one of my favorite activities of the year. And I'm going to describe this in quite a bit of detail. When we talk about my favorite food, it kind of ends up always being the same. What's your favorite food? Do you like this? Yes, I do. No, I don't. I changed this activity to make it much more interesting and memorable, and I use loose parts to do it. I could have spent hours printing flashcards and printing little things and cutting them out so they look like real olives and real cheese and all the rest of it. But I don't have time for that. And you know what? Loose parts are developmentally beneficial. So I have, literature which supports my laziness. My lack of time, not laziness, my lack of time. So, Soul smiling. She knows. You can hear. You know what I'm talking about, girl, don't you? So anyway, this activity came out. We did a circle time discussion about the kind of food we all liked. We used a bit of string to throw it to people who like the same food as us. And from this discussion, we noticed that the food that everybody loved, because not everybody likes everything, the food everybody loved was pizza. Surprise, surprise. I bet everyone here loves pizza, right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't love pizza? We all love pizza. So we decided that we would make a class pizza. And I ran to the side of the room. I grabbed a great big hoop. You can see there, I've got bits of cutout paper. I've got bits of twine. We've got some TNT there. We've got some electrical tape. You know that tape, that fita colorida? We've got some of that. Just anything that I had on hand, I brought over. And I said, right, what ingredients do you like on your pizza? And everybody could then take one of these materials, anything, and they could say, I like this. And they'd say what it was. Normally they would say some vocabulary was familiar to them, like cheese, tomato, sauce. But there were other things which they didn't know, but we were able to learn. So they said azeitonas, and I would say olives. So we ended up with this nice list on the board of all of the ingredients that we liked on our pizza, and we made this pizza using loose parts. So it was already a hands-on, personalized, memorable activity. And then we ended up turning this, it became a math learning activity because we had a list of ingredients on the pizza on the board. And then we had a vote of who liked which ingredient on the pizza. And we graphed it. So it ended up being this math activity as well. We could visually see, we colored in little votes for every person who liked olives, for example. And in the end, we had sort of like this math graph that we could use to see who liked, which was the most popular ingredient. Olives. Oh, no, it wasn't olives. It was cheese, which was an ingredient that only one person likes, the least popular, etc. And so lots of opportunities to hear this new vocabulary over and over again, as well as working on so many different concepts. It was a really nice activity. I then followed it up in the following class by bringing in real pizza dough, real ingredients, and we made real pizzas, and we did like role play, pizza delivery role plays, which were a lot of fun, and we ate pizza at the end, and it was wonderful. But the heart of this activity really was the loose parts play. So those are 5 ideas for how you can incorporate these rather random materials into your classroom, into your teaching practice, to use them as wonderful, useful, developmentally beneficial ways of developing language. So, that is the end. That's brought us to the end. What I would love to hear from you now, let me close this down, is about any experiences you've had already with loose parts.
Yes. Can you listen me? With some echo.
It's my fault.
Now, okay? Okay.
Hold on.
Now.
Hold on. Let me just see here.
Over to you, Sol. Tell us about your experience with loose parts.
Here in my school, we have every Friday, we have the Brincar por Brincar. When the group 1, with the kids with 1 year, group 2 and group 3, who am I teaching now, and the teachers just throw a lot of objects in a place, just like at the parking lot or in the classroom or in the music room, like pipes, big pipes, like big blocks, and some small pieces of these jelly balls, you already told me. And the kids just imagine they are playing with this object, and some 3 kids are imagining they are cooking something, and the boys are imagining they are fighting, and another boys, they just play around. And me, as the English teacher, I just interact with them. It's amazing. I never, ever in my entire life could see this happening, And the teacher, come here, can you see my new house? And they just build a house with the EVA carpet, Oh my gosh. And the teacher just put some TNT fabrics, around, and they just imagine they are in the garden full of flowers, and they are bees. And oh, Claire, it's amazing. It was only 30 minutes of English class with this structure, but could be all day long. No, it's amazing. And they on Friday they can dress like customers, and the teacher get the Minnie Mouse fantasy, and some kids are princesses and the boys are heroes, and just playing around with like pipes or like we don't see, but when the kids are playing, it's magic.
Yeah,
the magic is happening.
I love that quote, play is a child's work. I think that's the absolute truth. When children are playing, they're actually learning. It's the best way. It's the best way. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sol. I think you've made a really nice testimony about what it's like when you open up space in your classroom for this kind of free play with open-ended materials to take place, and how magic, the word you use was magic, and I agree, it's pretty special. Has anybody else got experience working with loose parts that they'd like to share? Bruna, what about you? Have you worked with loose parts before? Or Geisa? Or Ana Lucia?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Last January.
Oh, not anymore.
Oh, she disappeared. Shame. Ana Lucia,
Maybe.
Geisa, or Lillian, do one of you have an internet connection that's working and experience working with loose parts?
Claire?
Yes.
Okay. Today I am in my pajamas, all right? So
So do I. Shh.
sorry. I watched it, but today I am really exhausted. So that's why I'm just watching. But I've already worked it, and you were speaking, and I'm writing lots of loose part that I can use. But the one that they really like, and I always work, is just with blocks and ribbons. And they create lots of things. And in January, in the setting up a class, I started to collecting from dressmakers buttons. And I'm gonna use these buttons and ribbons to work with faces.
Nice.
But now, for a while, it's just this that I am using. But my list here is endless. And I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry, girls.
No, that's okay.
No problem. And listen, I know just that feeling. You'll start walking into like hardware stores, and you'll be like, look at those pipes. I could do so many things with those pipes. Or, oh my goodness, washers. Oh, what am I going to do with those washers? You just start looking at things with brand new eyes. I remember we were driving back from Pedra Azul in Espírito Santo, and we drove past these trees that had all of these pine cones which had fallen on the ground, and I screamed out to Paulo, stop the car, and I made him stop and pull over, and I filled our boot of the car, the trunk, with all of these pine cones.
I always do this.
Shells at the beach and sticks, and you know, they really are wonderful materials. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Bruna, you're back. Would you like to try again and tell us about your experience?
I don't know if you heard what part, where I stopped when
we didn't hear anything, so you can start at the beginning for us.
Sorry, I can't understand you. I couldn't hear you.
Okay. Bruna, why don't you try turning off your video camera and try just audio, and the connection might improve.
Sorry, I can't get it.
Try turning off your camera. Try turning off your camera, and the connection might improve.
All right.
Mamãe,
That's better already.
você está estudando? Eu preciso estudar para melhorar as aulas. Porque você está fazendo tudo bom? Ok?
Bruna?
Ela me conhece?
Okay, so yeah, we've lost Bruna. I'd like to just share one other thing, I think, at the end, just listening to everybody talking here. I don't want you to think that just by using loose parts and letting kids play freely, language will be learned. I don't want you to think that. I'm not sort of suggesting that we just free play is enough for children to learn language. If we have a look at children acquiring their first language, you'll notice that children hear words how many times, how much language input do children have before they actually start producing language in their mother tongue? Years before they're actually speaking. So if we are looking at children who have very limited contact with the language, very limited input, we need to be maximizing the opportunities that they have to hear the same language multiple times and experience this language in context multiple times. Now, loose parts, I think, is most effective for language learning when there is a connection between the activities that they're doing with the loose parts and the language that they've been hearing in class. So again, we're going back to that balance between teacher-directed and child-initiated play, and making sure you have a connection between the loose parts and the language that you've been teaching in previous lessons. And rather than loose parts play can be part of your teacher-directed activity. But if you're using it as a free play activity, what I like to call my loose parts play, or my centers, I like to call them invitations to play. So you've set up an activity with a purpose in mind, but you're not going in to dictate what they're going to be doing. Now, the example that I gave you earlier was the faces. When I set up a loose parts play activity, I wish I could pull up my Instagram account like this and show you the picture, but you'll see that they are making faces there, but they have seen those materials before because I've used them at circle time in a very teacher-directed way. So they've heard the language, they've been working on the vocabulary that they need, and then when you set up these activities, these invitations to play, they already naturally make the connection between those materials and specific language that they've seen before. And that's when you start seeing them experimenting, testing it out, talking to themselves, and the language you can tease the language out of them, like Sol was talking about before, how she goes in, she interacts with the children as they're playing. But you do need to make sure that you're making this connection between, I'll start again. It's most effective when you've made a connection between the language that you're looking at and the input, the language input that they've gotten earlier on, and your free play activity. Okay? So with that, we might end it there. Unless there are some questions that people have about this, I think we can wrap it up.
Can I ask something?
Please do.
Yes, sorry. I really want to know the difference between interfering and interacting.
Yes.
About this brincar por brincar that I already told you. I need to interact without interfering in their imagination.
Yeah.
For me, it's clear, but to the Professora Regente, she doesn't like me at all playing with the kids, because for them, like Regente, they want the children to create, to imagine the pipe is a sword, the fabric is like the sky or something like this. So I cannot interfere, but I need to interact with them. So how? I don't know it's a really thin line.
I think you've probably got it right, that you're probably doing just the right amount of play. I like the word teacher directed or adult directed. I think when we think about us wanting to avoid directing their play, saying do this or do that, like if you're not directing, if you are just going along with their play and scaffolding their language, asking them questions, repeating things back to them, being there as like a scaffold, that's fine. What your teachers might be having a hard time with is that really is for them a moment with like just for the kids. So they should be observing and documenting. But then you can't do that unless the activities have been introduced to them beforehand, and they're natural. For example, card games. If you had card games out there, but I know you're not using card games, but if I'm going to send you research from Dr. Sandy Moron, who talks about English language areas and she talks about this link between child-directed, child-initiated and teacher-led play. And that might be some data that you can use to talk or create a dialogue with the teachers so that you can come up with some kind of system, some kind of agreement on what your role is during free play. Because if you're just there like sitting back, not doing anything, not giving input, not scaffolding, not eliciting, then what are you there for? Like, especially if the materials aren't connected at all to your lessons, you know what I mean? If they're just materials that the children have never seen before or heard of in English, they're going to have to get input somehow.
Sometimes they use the same material for 2 or 3 days in a row, so they can be used to this. So that's why I am interacting. I can interacting because they already seen these. We already talked about the names and how we can play with this.
Yeah.
And
can you get access to those materials in your English time to really work with the language?
Yeah, sometimes.
Because that would be more effective. Or if you can get loose parts, for example, and work with them in class. Like imagine that if you had like the face activity I was talking to you about, if you had like a tray of materials that you worked with explicitly in English class and then had them available as an invitation to play at free playtime, like are you allowed to add materials to that free playtime? Because I think that's really important, Sol, to make it to maximize the effectiveness of that activity, is to have some kind of language input beforehand. Because they don't really, otherwise it's just not enough. It's like trying to imagine learning vocabulary after just hearing it 3 times. It's very, very challenging.
Yes.
Okay, ladies, let me know how it goes, Sol, and don't let me forget to send you that article, okay? In fact, I think I'll do it now for everyone. You might have already got this. Let's see, Ella's English learning. Here it is. English learning areas in pre-primary, this is. So I'm going to send you this link. I'm going to put it in the comments right here. There you go. Ladies, thank you very much for bearing with me for so long. That's back-to-back sessions with Claire. Whoa. I really love seeing you, and I hope you embrace this idea of loose parts play. I certainly know it's transformed my teaching, and enjoy. Let me know how it goes.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Bye-bye.